Are you looking to self-publish your first book? Or are you a millennial who's accomplished nothing in your life so far and you're hoping that publishing a book will fill that void? Well, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jen Trin, author of the multi-award losing book series, The Burl Friends. I started writing in October 2019 and have since self-published 3 full-length novels. Yay! The first of which came out in December 2019, just 2 months after I first started writing. 2 months! But guess what? I kind of regret it. I mean, I don't really regret it. It's a great book, and people really like it. But if I could go back and redo some things, I would. So today I'm here to share with you 5 mistakes. Five mistakes that I made with my debut novel so that you don't have to. This advice technically applies no matter which book you're on, your first or your 70th. But I'd like to address debuts specifically, especially because first impressions are so important. Imagine if someone messaged you on a dating app and their message was riddled with cliches, typos, and awkward phrasing. You'd swipe left and move on because there are so many other options. Similarly, there's so many other books out there, so why should they choose to read yours? You owe it to yourself to get it right the first try and give your readers the best experience that you can offer. Got it? Here we go. Number 1. Don't set an arbitrary deadline. With my debut novel, I started writing it right before I turned 30. So I had this brilliant idea to publish it before that milestone. But that only gave me 2 months to crank out my first ever book. And that was so naive of me. Look, it's absolutely possible to produce a great book in 2 months. Better authors than me have done so. But I was completely new. I had no idea what I was doing. It would have been better for me to have gotten the book to the place that it was when I hit publish, given it some room to breathe, and then done more revisions. Instead, I rushed through, hit publish, got dozens of downloads, and then promptly found myself crying on the couch. I mean, it was pretty cool to learn that I could push myself that hard. And now I can say that I've published a book before I turned 30. And even though it wasn't perfect, people legitimately enjoyed it. But I was so rushed at the end that I didn't even catch a bunch of mistakes. If I had just gone through it 1 more time, or 2 more times, or 3 more times, they wouldn't have been there. Look, it is important to set a deadline because it gives you a concrete goal to work toward rather than some abstract possibility. But be smart about it. Don't set an arbitrary deadline. And side note for all you millennials, Toni Morrison didn't publish her first book until she was 39. So you've got time to publish something great. Or if you don't publish anything at all, you're still awesome. Don't worry about it. We don't need to accomplish things. All right, so you figured out a reasonable deadline. You've written the draft, gotten feedback, and polished it as much as you possibly could. Now what? It's perfect, right? Wrong. After you've revised it as much as you could, you should still give your book time to breathe. Have you ever tried to frost a cake that was still warm and ended up with a complete mess? Yeah. Let your book chill for a minute before you put on the finishing touches and call it done. When you're revising your book and reading it over and over and over, it's easy to miss things. Your brain gets lazy. If you let your book breathe for a few weeks, or maybe a month or 2, and go back to it, you'll catch so many more mistakes. You'll notice sentences that sound clunky or awkward, or realize that no actual human being would say or do some of the things that your characters are saying or doing. I've actually revised my first book 3 times since publication, and each time I go back, I catch more stuff. Obviously, this is only relevant for self-published authors, but if you're looking for a traditional publishing deal and you're getting mostly rejections, it's possible that your book isn't as polished as it needs to be. If you give it some space and then go back and edit, you may be able to query better. Just make sure that you do eventually say, yeah, this is good, I'm done. Because if you don't, you risk turning your books into man-children. Let your babies fly. Don't let them become man-children. While you're taking your time editing, make sure you understand what it means to show, don't tell. You're like, gosh, Jen, tell me something I don't know. Everyone says this, right? Show, don't tell. But what does it really mean? New writers especially need to make sure that they understand it. Really. I was told to show, don't tell by some of my beta readers during editing of my first book. And I just nodded and said, yeah, I know. But I did not know. Now I know that it effectively means don't be lazy. When you're writing your first draft, it's okay to be lazy. In fact, it's efficient to be lazy. For example, you could just write, they went into his apartment and shared a passionate kiss. I can use that as a first draft placeholder to tell me what happened, and then move on, so that I can just focus on telling myself the story. That's how I like to write, painting broad strokes and then going back and filling in the details and tightening up the prose. But when someone is reading the final version of your book, they want to be immersed. That means including details and painting a picture rather than summarizing. So instead of "they went into his apartment and shared a passionate kiss," try
"The apartment door swung open, and Aaron dragged his fingers through her hair, gripping her neck and pulling her backwards until they fell against the wall in a tangle of limbs."
Which sentence would you prefer to read? I know which one I would pick. Don't be lazy. Show, don't tell. Another thing you'll want to do is set yourself up for sequels. If there's any possibility that you'll want to write follow-up books to your first, make sure that you understand who the next characters might be, or what are their motivational drivers, or what are their key attributes. Have you set them up properly in book 1? In book 1 of my series, for example, there's a character named Tom who's written as the comic relief. He's unattractive, obnoxious, and generally just annoying. But in book 3, I all of a sudden decided to make him the hero of the story. If I'd known ahead of time that he was going to be the hero, then I would have made him a little bit more redeeming in book 1. It worked out fine in the end, and he ultimately turned out to be one of my favorite characters in the series, but readers were skeptical about the fact that he was going to go from a loser to a swoony hero in book 3. Plus, my hero lived in New York City, and my heroine lived in San Francisco, and so I had to do all sorts of plotting gymnastics in order to get them together. Don't do that to yourself. A little bit of planning goes a long way. Finally, make sure that you have a marketing plan in place. Publishing your first book is a huge deal, and all of your friends, family, professional network, and even strangers will be thrilled for you. But make sure that you've got a plan to let them know and to leverage that excitement. Before I published Crushing on You, I had a Facebook page, a website, and an Instagram. And I set those all up just days before hitting publish. That means that I didn't spend any time hyping up my book or giving people a place to learn more about it. Reviewers often need weeks or sometimes even months of advance notice, and I didn't reach out to them until it was way too late. So I released the book and got a decent response from my private network, but hardly anyone outside of that picked it up. And honestly, it was disappointing, and it didn't have to be that way. Readers, especially on Bookstagram, are so friendly and encouraging, and they love finding new authors and helping to support them. But you've got to put in the work to reach out to them and make sure that they know about you in the first place. Reach out to anyone who could possibly be interested in your book and give them a clear set of actions that they can take to support you, and they'll probably do it. People are really nice. Honestly, the main takeaway from this video is walk, don't run. Yes, set a deadline. Yes, push yourself to write quickly, but don't rush. Don't skip steps or expect your book to just sell itself. Make sure that you understand why you're doing what you're doing. If your goal is to just publish a book before you turn 30 or to just let your friends and family read it, then it doesn't really matter, I guess. But if there's any chance that you're thinking about writing full-time in the future, don't act like an amateur. Set yourself up for success. Unlike me. But I also wanted to make this video to show that people make mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes with Crushing on You, but I've learned a lot along the way, and people still love it. In fact, I even won a grant to turn it into an audiobook, which will be released later this year. So even if you've already published your debut and messed up, don't worry. Just learn from it and keep going, and we'll figure it out. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them below, and I'll get back to you when I can. Bye!